So guys, what's going on? I hope you guys are well. So guys, I've just seen an interview from Keith Thurman. And Keith Thurman looks like he's making excuses about the Manny Pacquiao defeat. Um, I don't think this is a good look from Keith Thurman. This is a guy that should be fighting, been inactive for so long. And 2 years later, after the defeat, he's now making excuses about the Manny Pacquiao. I I was quite staggered at reading what he said. I didn't watch the interview. I read it. He said Manny Pacquiao's hands felt like cement. He was hit like when he was hitting me. His hands felt like some. His hands felt like they were cement hitting me. Um, I don't know what he was trying to insinuate by saying that. And then he said there was no testing, and most of his camp was, held in the Philippines. I don't know what Keith Thurman's trying to get out of that. Manny Pacquiao's obviously had this alleged, or people accusing him of, PD use throughout his career. But I think it was low of Keith Thurman to go there personally, because why would you go there, take your L, right, and then move on and try to come back? But for you to now come back 2 years later and start talking about, his hands felt like he was, hitting me with cement, and he's talking about the fact that there was no testing in camp and there was no testing for the fight. What are you trying to insinuate? You were doing all this talking. You were doing all this talking before the fight. You were talking all that smack, right? You end up losing the fight. You said, I'm going to take the defeat. If he beats me, I'm going to take it like a man. That's what he said. I'll give him his credit. And now you're coming out with all these excuses. This is not a good look for Keith Thurman. This makes him look bad. Keith Thurman, for me, is making excuses for his defeat against Manny Pacquiao. And I think that's for him to get his credibility back, because a lot of people feel like he lost to an old man guy. And let's be honest, a lot of people in boxing thought he was going to beat Manny Pacquiao. I didn't, but a lot of people did think that he was going to beat Manny Pacquiao. And I think his ego's been hurt since he's lost that fight. And I think he's now coming out with some ridiculous excuses, because to me, they're excuses, right? You're making excuses, man. Saying that, his hand felt like he was hitting. No one's ever accused Manny Pacquiao of his hands felt like cement. Like, what are you trying to say by that? You're trying to accuse someone without any evidence, right? Yeah, you were getting hit by him in the ring, but at the end of the day, you can't accuse anybody of anything when you don't know, and especially 2 years on. I hope Keith Thurman doesn't take the Wilder route, because it won't look good for him. And then saying about the PEDs, there was no testing, right? You knew that before you took the fight. So why did you if you were that worried about it, why didn't you speak about it during the build-up? You agreed to that. So I find it staggering that Keith Thurman, I just think Keith Thurman should keep his mouth shut and just get on with fighting and negotiating a deal. We've not heard anything from Keith Thurman about who he's going to fight. We've not heard him about negotiating a fight. We've not heard anything. But yet, all we hear him is him, do these silly videos that he does, filming himself and saying that, how he's motivated, how he's got the hunger back, how he wants to fight him. But we don't hear anything about him negotiating a fight, nothing going on behind the scenes, nothing. We don't hear anything. He'll come out after like a month or so, do his piece. And actually, this one is not a good look, in my opinion, because this seems like excuses to me. And listen, I think I always liked Keith Thurman. I thought he was a good fighter. And he's definitely, in my opinion, if he can get his act together, he could give Spence and Crawford tough fights. No doubt about it. But just I don't know where Keith Thurman is at mentally. And the fact that he's coming out with bizarre excuses, the ones, especially when you didn't mention any of these things after the fight, especially you didn't even mention the fact that there was no testing. He didn't mention anything during the build up to the fight. If you were that concerned about it, why didn't you mention it? Why didn't you pull out the fight? But yet now, after 2 years later, you want to make excuses. See, I just don't like that. I just don't like when you make excuses, especially these are things that you could have raised prior to the fight. Okay, the hands feeling like cement and stuff. That again, we all know with the glove situation in boxing today that all of that stuff is nonsense because there's a commission there that check your hands and check everything's thoroughly, and that's all examined. So that all of that can't, is all nonsense anyway. But I don't know what Keith done. Maybe he was just praising Manny Pacquiao's power. I don't know what he meant by that. Maybe he was just praising the fact that Manny Pacquiao hit really hard, or maybe it was again something to do with the testing. Maybe he was linking it. Maybe it was the fact that he was saying, that he hadn't been tested, and and that's why he had so much power. I don't know. Maybe that was all linked. But it seems like excuses, right? It seems like excuses, especially when you're mentioning something 2 years later about testing after 2 years after the fight, nearly 2 years, right? They fought in what, August or July? I can't remember when they fought in 2019. But you didn't mention that. You didn't mention that, during the build-up of the fight, or you didn't mention that a month after, 2 months after the fight, but you mentioned it 2 years later. Again, I think it's wrong. I think what he's doing is taking credit away from Manny Pacquiao. That's what he's doing. He's taking credit away from Manny Pacquiao. And it's kind of easy to do because we all know that Manny Pacquiao has been accused before of this. So it's easy for anyone to kind of like say, oh, well, just bring up, the drug testing situation because people have accused him before. But I just think it's very low of Keith Thurman, he got paid a lot of money for that fight. And you didn't mention any of that prior to the fight. You didn't mention any of that during the build-up to the fight. So why would you mention it 2 years later? It's only going to look like sour. Like you're being sour. You're being bitter. That's what it looks like to me. Why would you mention something like that? I just think I think he's taking credit away from Manny Pacquiao. I think Manny Pacquiao at the age of 43 beat him, and now 2 years later he's coming out. Why didn't you mention that a month after or during the build-up if you were that concerned? But you're all right, taking the fight and cashing that check. But now 2 years later you're trying to make excuses about why you lost. I don't think personally it's a good look for Keith Thurman because I think Keith Thurman, although he lost the fight against Manny Pacquiao, I thought he won over a lot of fans the way he fought, the way he pushed Manny Pacquiao. Even a lot of Filipinos were impressed with how Keith Thurman pushed Manny Pacquiao. And I think, obviously, a lot of Filipinos were bigging him up because, Manny Pacquiao hadn't fought Spencer Crawford, and they thought, obviously, when you got a favorite fighter that you support, you're gonna big up a guy that beat him. But I think he would even go down in their estimations now after this because he's accusing. In my opinion, why would you even mention that? As soon as you mention that there was no drug testing, his hands felt like cement. I feel like you're insinuating something. I feel like you're trying to put something out there. You're trying to, fire a dart out there, and that's, for me, not a good look because 2 years later after the fight, that just looks like sour grapes. You've been beat, and you need to take the defeat like a man and move on, and then maybe look to get yourself in a position where you could have a rematch. I don't think the rematch will ever happen with him and Pacquiao, but I think put yourself in a position where you could fight someone like a Spence or a Crawford, because right now Keith Thurman is doing a lot of talking, but there's no fighting. We're not hearing anything about him fighting anybody. We're not hearing anything about his next opponent. Who's he going to be fighting? Keith Thurman right now, is he a guy that's even a top 5 welterweight? I think he would have slipped down. If you haven't fought for 2 years, right? That's not an ambition of an active fighter that you can say is a force in a division. If you haven't fought for 2 years, for me, that's a fighter that's on the way out. Like, when we look at Amir Khan, for example, he's on the way out. He hasn't fought for 2 years. Keith Thurman hasn't fought for 2 years. Keith Thurman actually fought A month after they fought around the same time, but we're now hearing of news about Amir Khan potentially fighting soon. So Keith Thurman, there's still no concrete news about who's he potentially going to be fighting next. Is he going to fight again? I don't know. It's really sad because I thought Keith Thurman at one point in his career was the #1 welterweight in the world and was a real force in the welterweight division. His career's completely slid off. After the Garcia fight, his career's completely slid off, and I don't even think he's had any longevity. He literally won the title, right? And became a unified champion, didn't even defend it once. You know, it's sad the way his career's declined, and I don't know whether he has any hunger motive. I know he's talking like he does, but we haven't seen anything. We haven't seen him negotiating a fight. We haven't seen him in training. We haven't seen anything. So as of right now, I don't even know if Keith Thurman's a top 7 welterweight. Is he even a top 10 welterweight? I don't know. Is he gonna, when we see him next, is he gonna be completely shot to bits? Because let's be honest, he didn't look great against Lopez. Yeah, he improved his performance against Pacquiao, but I don't think he looked that great against Pacquiao. Yeah, he managed to rally on in the later half of the fight, but, you know, let's not forget, most people thought he would beat Pacquiao. So he didn't look good against Lopez. He didn't look great against Pacquiao. Now he's been inactive for 2 more years. What's he going to look like now? Because now he's getting older. We don't know if he's training. So, again, I think Keith Thurman needs to focus. If he's really serious about making a comeback, he needs to get active. He needs to start fighting. He needs to start fighting 2-3 times a year. Otherwise, you know, he's going to see himself decline very, very fast. If he's not already declined very, very fast. Because who knows, if he was to fight someone like a Virgil Ortiz might do him over. If he was to fight someone like Crawford, maybe the fight would be very one-sided. Fight Spence, maybe Spence knocks him out in 3-4 rounds. We just don't know where Thurman's at. So, yeah, it's disappointing with Keith Thurman because I really felt like he could be a force, but I don't know whether he's got any hunger to fight anymore, personally. And it's sad because, like I said, I think he was a real contender for a top 10 pound for pound at one point in his career. He was really, really good. I felt like he was a great boxer, had great power, but unfortunately for Keith Thurman, his career's just kind of slid off. He just slid away and, you know, almost become a guy that nobody really cares about or thinks he's even relevant, which is sad, really. But leave your thoughts. Let me know what you think about Keith Thurman's excuses. Leave your thoughts in the comment section below. And guys, remember to please like, share, subscribe to my channel. See you guys in the next video. Peace.